Hi, this is Muho on July 19th in a beautiful temple in Kyushu, southern Japan. Today I would like to talk about a topic that I've been talking about for several times now. At first I started giving some of these talks the title Who Am I? Next I was commenting about a video or an article by Brad Warner about God and Zen. And the other day I uploaded a video which was titled something like "Every day is a fine day, give me a break, only one day is a fine day." And that would be today. Today is not every day. Today is special because it's the only day. It's the only day in the history of the universe. Of course, all the other days would claim the same, but they are not real. The other days are only part of this one day. And if you go to that video and look in the comment sections, you might see there's a number of very interesting questions, and I gave also some quite longish answer to some of these questions. Then the other day I got an email in German which was related to a different video, a German video, but basically it's about the same topic. In that email, somebody asked me if the question, the problem, couldn't be easily solved through the metaphor that is used in the Flower Garland Sutra. It's sometimes called in English. In Japanese it's called Kegon Kyo. I forgot the Indian name. It's something like Avatamsaka Sutra or something like that. Either way, the metaphor there is there's one huge net, Indra's net. And overnight, there's lots of little dewdrops that build on those nets. Wherever there's a crossing at that net, there's a little dewdrop. And the whole net is reflected in each of these dewdrops. That means that each of the dewdrops contains the whole net and also all of the other dewdrops. And all of the other dewdrops also reflect that one drop. So that means that each drop reflects all the other drops and also reflects the other drops that are reflected in the other drops, and so forth until eternity. So there's an infinity of universes that also contain all the other universes. Basically, this metaphor describes the structure of reality. We are all one single drop that reflects the whole universe. The whole universe is contained in each one of us, and we contain all living beings. And we are being contained by all other living beings. But, and that was my reply to that email, there's a problem with this metaphor. It depends also on how we use the metaphor. We can use it in two different ways, which I want to explain. But either way we use the metaphor, there's going to be a problem. It's a very useful metaphor, but in the end, I think we have to use the metaphor both ways, but these two ways contradict each other. So in a logical way, it's impossible to use the metaphor both ways. But we have, if we take Mahayana Buddhism seriously, we have to use the metaphor both ways. What do I mean with both ways? The first way to use the metaphor is to start with a net and say, for example, if you're somebody who is a scientist, for example, you could say, well, the net, that's objective reality. And we are all part of this objective reality. Our brains, for example, let's call it matter, the whole of matter. The whole universe is one mass of matter, or it could be one very complicated wave function of energy. It could be energy, whatever. And our brains are part of that mass, of course. And each of these brains gives rise to one independent consciousness. But each of the brains pictures the universe inside themselves, and also each one of our brains makes pictures of how we might be pictured by the others. So each one of us has a consciousness, but we're also conscious of what the others are conscious, and so forth. And that's one way to interpret this metaphor. Another way, which sounds quite different but is actually more or less the same, would be the traditional Christian way, and say this net is basically the world as God created it when he said, may it be light in the beginning. When he said, may it be light, he created the net, and then later on the afternoon of the sixth day, he started to create little drops on the net. First was only two, Adam and Eve, but then got more and more and more. So each one of us is a little drop in the universe that was created by God. And we all reflect this universe, so actually God is reflected in us. And that's all nice. So that's the first way we could interpret this metaphor. There's only one universe, many drops. We are one of these drops, and each one of the drops reflects the whole universe. The problem with this approach to the metaphor is that it does not explain the fact that there is actually only one day that's special, and it's 2 days. Or in this metaphor, it's only one drop that's special. This drop. There's thousands, there's millions, there's billions, trillions of drops in the universe. Yes. How come there's one drop that's special? And when I say special, I mean it's real. It's the only one that's real. And that is me. How come there's only one day in the history of the universe that's special? Because it's 2 days. And that is something that you cannot explain with the scientific worldview, and you cannot explain by traditional Christianity either. We are all equal in that worldview. We all have more or less similar consciousnesses. We are all the offspring of Adam and Eve. The mystic would use the same metaphor in a different way. The mystic would say, in the beginning is not the net. In the beginning there's only one drop. When God said, may it be light, That was me. That was me. And everything else later, that was created inside that drop. The net comes second. The drop comes first. And there's only one drop. And that drop is me. When was that drop created? Now, right now in this moment. That's what the mystic would say. And you could say that in Zen, it's also about this realization that I'm not living Muho, who's 1 out of 7 billion peoples. I'm actually living the whole universe. There's nothing but this. There's nothing but this here and now, so to speak. But the problem with this approach is what I tried to explain also in the past. If that is the end of the story, there's no need to communicate that. There would be no need for me to speak to the camera and upload that on YouTube. There would be no need for the Buddhist ancestors to take students. There would have been no need for Shakyamuni after his enlightenment to get up from his seat and for 40 years travel throughout India and preach. Because the moment the drop reaches enlightenment, the whole universe gets enlightened. If the mystic is right, there's nothing to communicate, because we're all one with that mystic. If we start with the drop, it becomes impossible to explain how there can be other independent drops from that drop. If I and the mystic are one, how come that I cannot see through the mystic's eyes? And even if the mystic would claim that he can see what I can see, and he can hear what I can hear, and he knows exactly what's going on in my head, we would still not be one, because I don't know what is going on in the mystic's head. I would be thinking, well, he's probably lying, but I don't know for sure. So in the beginning I said, if we take Mahayana Buddhism seriously, we need to use both of these contradictory approaches to the metaphor of Indra's net. What in Buddhism is called liberation is the realization that I'm not one player in the game, but actually I can quit the game. And when I take this backward step that Dogen Zenji mentions in the Fukan Zengi, stop being a player in the game and look at the game, I see there's nothing outside the game. There's no other players with whom I compete. There's actually nothing outside the here and now, this person. So in a way I could say that, yeah, I'm the universe. When I'm looking at the world is looking at the world is looking at me. Or Meister Eckhart said, the eye with which I look at God is actually God's eye looking at me. There's only one I, And that is the universe. But if I stop there, it wouldn't be Mahayana Buddhism. I have to take the cries of those serious who say, what you say there sounds nice, but I want to get a glimpse of that myself. If the mystic is right, the moment my problem is solved, all of the problems in the universe are solved. Because there are no others. We are all one. If that would be the end of the story, Shakyamuni would have had no need to get up from his seat under the Bodhi tree. So we also need the other approach to the metaphor. That means we have to admit that none of us is the only drop. There are other drops hanging on that net, and from their perspective, they are the only ones. So what a Zen master tries to do is this paradoxical thing of telling another that he is actually the whole universe and there's nobody there except him. But to tell him that, the master needs to take the student serious as an independent consciousness. So he's telling him, we are not independent subjects, but to be able to tell him that, he needs to take him serious as an independent subject. It's a little bit, I use this metaphor in the comment section under today is the only special, the only good day. I use this metaphor of saying on July 19th, or maybe writing it in your diary. On July 19th, I make a note in my diary saying there's only one day in the universe, in the history of the universe, and that's July 20th. In the hope that a person who opens that diary on July 20th realizes that actually he's living in the now. But of course it's a contradiction to say that on July 19th. On the other hand, if I say on July 19th, this is a special day because it's the only day, the person who reads it on July 20th would shrug their shoulders and say, well, you're obviously wrong. Yeah, so if there's only one consciousness in the universe, how come that I don't know what's going on in your head and you don't know what's going on in my head? On the other hand, if we're all more or less the same independent consciousnesses, 1 out of a billion, 7 billion, human consciousnesses. How come that this is so special? How come there's one and only one who hears the sound? Who hears the sound? That's the question that the first koans are about. The koan about the Buddha nature of a dog or the one hand clapping. They're basically about this realization. But then later, if you do koan practice, you also get to a point where you need to communicate what you realize. The master wants you to communicate the sound that you heard when you heard one hand clapping. How do you communicate mu to a 3-year-old child? In the Heart Sutra, these two aspects are called form and emptiness. The first realization is that Muho, who thought he was part of the world of form, is actually emptiness. That's the realization of the mystic. But the, for me, puzzling thing is that the mystic needs to get back into form. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. The mystic needs to get back into the net and accept the fact that he is not the only drop in that net. But then he's trying to communicate to the other drops that actually they are the only drops. How is that possible? Or do we simply have to accept this paradoxical structure of the world? That the world simultaneously started with the drop, and the net came later, but there never would have been a drop without the net being first. Okay, so much for today. Have fun. And yeah, if you interested in more, if this is maybe one of your first videos by me that you hear on that topic, maybe you can back to these old videos as well. Who am I? And God and Zen. And if you haven't read it already, maybe go to the comment section of the video. Every day is a fine day, give me a break. There's only one day. That's a fine day. Okay, have a fine day.